Yes.
And literally, was it an indirect way of the CJ telling the executive arm of the government and Parliament, where you and Honorable Kajwang sit, the bicameral setup, that you have failed the Kenyan people in adhering to the principles of good governance?
First of all, as I understand it, and I'm a lawyer by training, okay? When somebody says, let us have a conversation about the institution of judiciary, about the fact that there are some people within the same institution that have issues, that is not condemning the entire institution, okay? That is not unconstitutional also. When the president says, let us have a conversation, that is not unconstitutional. And this is this conversation we are having it. Because, in fact, the Chief Justice has confirmed there were 72 complaints, okay? And she stated to the Kenyan people that 3 judges left the judicial service. And they left the judiciary. 1 opted for early retirement. 2 of them went through the process, and they had to leave the judiciary. She said there are 49 complaints which are being processed, okay? And she said 13 complaints were dismissed. So we are having that conversation. What is wrong with having a conversation? In fact, we need to remind ourselves, ndugu yangu, that last year, we also had a very serious conversation about religion and religious leaders when Shakahola happened, okay? And I happen to have chaired that committee, ad hoc committee, for the time that it was alive. And it is very, very difficult to have conversation about unelected people, you know, who occupy office for life, okay? And people who wield a lot of authority, okay? And people who are feared, respected, even feared. That's why, you know, when the BBC was running that, documentary on one of the preachers who are very famous in Nigeria, all of us were shocked, including myself. But we must have conversation, and we had that conversation, and recommendations were made. Now, the other arm that is not elected and occupies a position until retirement is the judiciary. When the president says, let us have conversation about some issues here, I think we need to understand the way this thing is being framed. And this conversation must be had. You see, unlike the executive and us who are in the National Assembly or the Senate, we always have this conversation after every 5 years. You are thrown out. You know, the people, actually, the Constitution recalls you, gives the opportunity for change. No, that's not the case for judiciary. That's not the case for other important places like the clergy, you know. And we have given them a lot of power. So when the question is put that let us have conversation about these issues, we shouldn't look at it all negative, because at the end of it, no matter how difficult it is, people start looking at questions and start asking themselves issues and start improving institutions. You see, I like what the Chief Justice said. The Chief Justice said, let us have those complaints processed, if there are. Let us have the evidence brought, if you have any. Now, you know, a lot of Kenyans in this country didn't know that, you know, you can even take complaints against judges when they are not doing the right thing. A lot of Kenyans didn't know that. This conversation, we are having it. A lot of Kenyans also are asking whether, in fact, Parliament is obeying the court orders, whether the executive is obeying court orders. These things, this discussion would not have been brought to the fore if we are not having this conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Now, that has nothing to do with obeying or disobeying court orders. I think we are having a very healthy debate. And I think if we can moderate this debate, at the end of it, it's not all going to be wasted.
Thank you.
We are going to have a very nice definitions on what can the courts do, what can they do, what can Parliament do, what can it do, what can the executive, what can it do.
Okay.
And this is how we build a good society.
Thank you. But
that's where I see it.
Yes, yes. And given what you have said in terms of the negativities, I'll come to you, Senator Kajwang. You said healthy conversation. But to the common thinking Kenyan, it's not healthy, is it, when your colleague from the Senate, Senator Cherargei, calls court orders tissue papers and calls on the president to disregard them, and when you have lawmakers calling for the total suspension of this constitution, when you have the president, he himself, in Nyandarua County saying, PS, weka pesa tuendele na maneno, yet there is a court order to that effect of the construction of that road. I mean, how does that language from the leadership descend down to the common man, even as you talk about the healthy conversation that you have noted?
I agree. Sometimes when we are having debate, people can go overboard, you see. And some of those issues are to be looked at in that manner. You see, when an honorable member stands and says a court order is a tissue paper, I think that is not even parliamentary, that is not even correct, and we all know that. Some people go far, but if we can intellectually look at these issues and dissect them, you will see that there is a need of us to have discussion. And let me put in the point. When we were growing up practicing law, okay, the principle was you could never injunct government. You could not injunct government. Never. As life went on, and we are we're going old now, the law, the jurisprudence evolved that conservatory orders can be issued against public bodies. Now, in our time, that was not there. We could not injunct government. But now, conservatory orders can be issued. Now, the question then, we should have a discussion about is how far and what are the conditions for us that should be fulfilled before a conservatory order is issued, because it has huge implications. For example, if we are building the SGR, and it is continuing, and Kenya, as a nation, we have committed billions. And then a conservatory order is issued to say, no, the construction should not go on. Now, how far can we go with some of those conservatory orders? Okay. And what are the conditions? I think this emerging jurisprudence, this is discussion that we need, because this whole issue is around what and what cannot be done with conservatory orders.
Okay. We'll look at
and I think when we start discussing that, we'll be getting into the real nitty-gritty.
Thank you. And the nitty-gritty details is what we are going to be getting into shortly, Honorable Mungatana. Let me bring in